Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads a must converse is the channel. Thanks for coming by. I have a wonderful group here, right? Um, just so everybody is on the same page and anybody who sees it knows exactly which channels are represented. Everybody want to introduce yourself a little bit? Let's start with the one who adapted the text that is basically prompting our dialogue, Science and Faith, a book original. You can say the original authors,
Yeah,
Tom. And,
yeah. There, this is Tom in LA from the channel Tom LA Books, and thanks Noah so much. It's the book is called Science and Faith. As you correctly said, I only adapted it. The actual authors are two Italian professors. Their name are Giuseppe Savignone and Alfio Briguglia, and they are from Sicily, from Palermo. They've been friends since 1947, which is something pretty impressive in itself.
that's for sure. All channels will be linked in the description box, everybody. So if you're not on with one, so how about Christy Louise Dostoevsky in Space? Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just good friends with Noah, and the instant that he had time on his channel and showed off that graphic novel, I knew I had to read it. So I'm just really glad to be here and chat.
Very cool. And last but not least,
Yes, this is Dario. Hi, everybody. I'm running a channel, Motley Reads, a boutique outlet over here in Sweden. So I also spotted this one, and I had some contact with both Tom and Noah about this. So when Noah proposed for me to participate in this live stream, I jumped at it immediately. This is fantastic topic, and also the work that Tom has done based on Alfio's and Giuseppe's base. It's really amazing. Yeah.
very cool. And Motley Reads is a great channel. Been following the saga along from you, buddy, but always some nice outside that is very different from my surrounding area. So I love to see it. And Dario is from Sweden, and Tom is Italian, but now in California, right?
That's
and
right.
Christy and I are full-blooded American, right?
Mm-hmm. Although
right,
very different parts.
Tom was on a live with me. That's how this kind of idea started. Tom was on a live with me, and we start talking about maybe midrash, these kind of topics. And what you had said is that you personally are invested in wanting to create dialogue and have dialogue, and that is just where a passion for you sits. And when I started reading this Science and Faith, that is exactly what this is. I can see why you were why you gravitated to this this story, how it's laid out. It's not necessarily like a plot-driven narrative, but there is plot and everything to your adaptation, at least. I haven't read the book, but we're just going to jump right in. And one of the first things that I saw is that it calls out how people are susceptible to defining, having one framework in which they try to understand their reality, whether that be a scientific framework, or whether that be a spiritual framework from some religious tradition, or some esoteric, spirituality or something like this. But there is, or some philosophical framework, or psychology even might see everything in terms of sense data coming in, and how that's interpreted by the individual. And but just humans across the board have a tendency to try to see their reality from within one framework. We don't have, our brains are not enough to hold so much, and there is so much really out there. So I wanted to bring that up first, that, you know, one perspective, however grand that perspective seems to be, a philosophical perspective, or even modern science seems to be this behemoth, for lack of a better word, that is just has the potential maybe to be an all-encompassing theory of everything kind of stuff. So people grab onto a framework, and then when things don't fall within that, they either discard it or they have some cognitive dissonance kind of stuff. What do you think about that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like you said, Noah, the dialogue really is the point, and is the direction that I've always loved to approach this type of topics. And by coincidence, or maybe not, the original title of the Italian book was in fact La pazienza del dialogo, which is translated into The Patience of Dialogue Between Science and Faith, because dialogue requires patience. In other words, the easy thing to do for any of us is to cling to one framework, like you were saying, one particular set of one particular worldview, and not apply any flexibility to it, or not being able to see things in any different way. You can certainly embrace one particular tradition, one particular worldview, etc., because that's what we do. But at the same time, with a little patience, with a little effort, all of us are able to understand why all the people around us may see things differently. Like, we see science and faith as generally compatible concepts. Then there are other people who don't. And, you know, the way to disagree peacefully around this is, I think, I love it. I love when that happens, because it means that we are using our brain in the best way. We are using what I think it's called mental plasticity, which is it takes a little bit more effort. Again, is not the easiest thing to do, but is the most fruitful, is the most constructive.
Patience and effort. That's definitely something that needs to be kept in mind in this kind of dialogue. You want to chime in, Christy or Dario?
Go ahead, Dario, if you have anything.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, why is it in this way that there are so you know, solid barriers between these different domains of, you know, the religious views on the world and scientific views on the world, and, you know, scientific views as opposed to faith. And I think you can see it in all realms of human activity. Actually, even if you step out, you know, from this and look just into, for instance, take like more like a banal example, like if you work within a certain industry, and then try to change an industry, you know, so you would be ridiculed and rejected by both the people in the industry you're leaving and by the people in the industry you're coming to. And is this like, you know, this herd mentality
Sure.
that is there, which is basically, you know, put there to kind of preserve the group and reject everybody outside of that. And even in scientific society, within different scientific disciplines, and even within the same scientific discipline, you have that. You have this in areas of physics or engineering science, where I've been active in. You have these, you know, research programs that have, you know, both it's positive heuristics and negative heuristics. Basically, these positive heuristics, this whole set of systems, methods, ideas, all these unexplored white spots and everything, that where everybody's feeling safe and exploring that. And you have this negative heuristic that is actually rejecting any attempt actually to falsify by any of the underlying, universal statements or fundamental premises there. So I think it's kind of built in that you cannot collaborate between the systems. At the same time, I think that is a very limiting worldview that we have, because when you think about it, when you think about the world, and when you look at one area and then you look into second one, if you're fully open-minded, you see complementarity between everything. It doesn't matter what you look at. We don't need to look into science and faith. You look into,
Right.
I don't know, milk production and production of carrots.
Right.
You see complementarity. You see the systems, how they intertwine. So the whole world is based. Everything is in fact connected there. So I think yes, science and faith, they can coexist. They must coexist, because they are just different facets through which we see the world.
I think you bring up some very good points, and especially another aspect of human nature, I think, is to that you're speaking into, is we kind of group together by things that we believe, and then there's also people that lead, that are more leaders, and then they'll come out and say, and the dialogue, this kind of dialogue, and many like it that you can point to, say things that are very polarizing, to kind of speak to their base, and speak to and to differentiate between people. And this kind of dialogue is not, that's the not fruitful thing, but that has been perpetuated by a long history.
Tom quoted some of those
in
the book.
By people with good intentions and bad, and just it's the whole spectrum. So not trying to nail anybody specifically with that, but that's just another aspect of human nature, right? Christy, you want to chime in on it?
Yeah, the tribalism thing. I mean, we see that in like every area of life where it's not very clear cut. Like, people make it try to make complex issues seem like it's really clear cut. But this is a complex issue, because Tom talks a lot in the first 2 chapters, which is what I've read, about using different lenses, and like science is a different, it's like a different tool for a different job, and I think it's really essential for people to understand that. It's like faith and science are like 2 different pairs of glasses, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. So
I see what you're saying there, and I mean, what's more complex than one questions of what is reality and what is this thing that we're in, or questions of being, and that is 2 different kind of things that are totally huge, that many different aspects of humanity are being brought to bear on those kind of things. Tom, after the speaking, you want to follow up on any of this stuff?
Well,
that's been being said.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, what I love about the relationship in particular between science and faith is that something that should be a little bit more accessible seems to be fragmented and difficult to grasp even for young people today, let's say, because in the, let's call it, mainstream Western culture, I don't think there is a very clear stance on where science and faith stand. I mean, depending on who you ask, you might find people who think they are in opposition, and you might find people who think they are complementary and they go well together. So it's it's one of those conversations where I haven't that I find difficult in any case, because I've seen so much fragmentation. And if somebody is trying to approach science, that's a little easier, because we live in the time of modern science and technology. But if somebody is trying to approach faith, that's where the perspective shifts and get into problems that don't need to be problems. It's only that I don't feel the explanation of these problems is at hand, is accessible to everybody. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're really on point with that, and we're being very careful, and we're being very mindful of the language that we're using when we're just entering into this discussion right here, and that is of utmost importance in it, especially if we are going to talk about certain concepts like faith, spirituality. What does that mean? And even concepts like indeterminate or chance, things like that that are charged words. If you're talking about a scientific viewpoint of in physics, it means a little more than just your basic randomness, whatever, right? And so just everybody being on the same page is something that's necessary. But when we're talking, we have to always see that the other is an individual and has individual experiences and things that have shaped what they think, and those things are valid. They are a human being and have the same capacity and the same faculties as you do. And so keeping that in mind is something that I always it has a lot of value. It has a lot of weight in a discussion like this with someone.
Yeah. And also what's happened maybe from a historical standpoint, if we look at let's take the last 2000 years, okay, 2000, it's not like human beings are different today than 2000 years ago. We are the same, but there is this sense that things have fundamentally changed because and I believe in correct sense, because science can explain so many things today, because science can discover and explain so many things. As a consequence of this, the culture has started to lazily think that science is truth. The science is the avenue to truth. And in history, nobody has ever thought, among the majority of philosophers, at least that I know, that empirical experiments would take us to truth. There are two different things. And even in the book, the authors made the point using from Einstein, where he said he obviously was not a religious man. He was a scientist, and he didn't really have a big religious life. And I understand what science and what truth is. There are two different concepts. And that was one of my original points that made me think about this topic.
Very cool. You wanna chime in, Dario? I see
Yeah,
you. I see you looking like you're thinking down there.
Yeah. I do, and this is, I think. Thanks. No, I think all this thing about relationship between science and faith. I see them really as two different domains, and I don't really see how science could ever prove or that God does or does not exist. Or it's like it's
Right.
completely
It's not
two different ball games, so to say. And also when you're saying here, Tom, about the observations, the experiments, being kind of fundamental tools in scientific inquiry, that is pretty delimiting as well as how far you can go with this, because if not for any other reason, but for the reason that when you work with scientific inquiry, that the experiments and outcome of experiment is formed very much with how did you set up that experiment. Setting up experiment is you are coming from somewhere You already coming with certain preconceptions. It is, and it got me to think about. I pulled this out just a minute before I sit down here. This play. It's, let's see, where's coming? Copenhagen by Michael Frayn. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
Michael Frayn wrote Headlong.
Yeah, it's Michael Frayn. Yeah, he's writing lots of these silly British books. But this play is about the meeting between Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg.
Nice.
the two huge theoretical physicians from 1920s and 1930s. And these two guys, they were on opposite sides. Niels Bohr he's a Danish, and he's a Danish Jew. He lived in Denmark, and then he emigrated when Germans occupied Denmark. He emigrated to the U.S. and was a part of the atomic bomb project, right? And Werner Heisenberg was working with the Nazis. They were great friends before the war, and in 1941, Heisenberg went to Copenhagen. He met with Bohr. They had a meeting in Bohr's home. They talked about something. Nobody knows about what. What was said. Shortly thereafter, Bohr emigrated to the U.S. and participated in the Manhattan Project. Right? Some people say that some drawings have been exchanged, that some ideas have been exchanged, whatever. And some people are even saying that it changed the course of the World War II. Nobody knows what happened. And the Frayn is trying to fictionalize this discussion between these two guys. Right? And in one passage here, he's saying this, and this is quite interesting. And I've come to think about this so many times. Here, Bohr says, it starts with Einstein. He shows that measurement on which the whole possibility of science depends, measurement is not an impersonal event that occurs with impartial universality. It is a human act, carried out from a specific point of view in time and space, from the one particular viewpoint of a possible observer. Then, here in Copenhagen, in those 3 years in the mid-20s, we discovered that there is no precisely determinable objective universe, that the universe exists only as a series of approximations, only within the limits determined by our relationships with it, only through the understanding lodged inside the human head. And I think it says tons. It says tons, and it's kind of summarizing my whole experience of scientific inquiry in my previous career as a scientist. So what do we really know? What is truth? We develop theories that are utilitarian, but is it truth?
We'll get to the philosophical question, that's for sure. But Dario, you said that you were the one that's not going to be name dropping.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Only Michael Frayn. Then Michael Frayn is name dropping.
Right. Very good. And Heisenberg is the Heisenberg of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle,
yes,
which is fundamental tenet of quantum mechanics. Now, it's pretty much a solid formula that everyone us in the scientific community is going to take as writ. Right now, what that is a it is a formula that provides predictability on a certain level. That's what it does, and the predictability proves itself in the doing by working out the formula with a set of conditions, initial conditions, and those kind of things. So the value in something like that comes from its predictive power in experience in what we do and in how these scientists are applying this kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It is wonderful. It has made, these kind of things have made our modern world more advanced than any other age that we can point to in history. But it is also its own set of the whole like you say, it is a relative truth, not an absolute truth. Relative to us, relative to the human mind, relative to our experience with it. You know, it's the uncertainty principle doesn't say what anything is. You know, it can predict.
And it says also, as soon as you apply measurement to something, you are then actually impacting, you are manipulating the object that you are observing. So it introduces an uncertainty in the observation as such. So it is, you know, our observation ability is very, very much colored with what we are trying to accomplish, and basically then from that, what I'm trying to say is that having that in mind, I think that the scientific inquiry in itself might be able to answer questions of the existence of divine powers or something. I think you know, it is not, they're not operating in the same domain at all.
Right. I think you're exactly right about that. And it's just that, like, the science is about, or this, you know, that this area that you're talking about is about observance, predictability, and development, which has turned into technology and things for us. The aim is not capital T truth of being or of reality. Tom, you want to jump in? Please.
No, I really love this. First of all, I'm going to read Copenhagen. Thank you, Dario, for making our list.
Same.
At the time. I love the noise. I love the loud boom of my TBR exploding every day. But it sounds really, really fascinating. So I'm going to get a copy of it. And, you know, staying on point on what you mentioned, Einstein, and the concept that he put forward, what he was saying is that reality as experienced by our brain is a rendition of reality. It's a rendition of reality. It's not reality objectively as it is. Because, like you said, like Einstein said, none of us knows or has the ability to know what reality is objectively. There is always we can go back to Plato, right? The image. There is always an image of reality that we operate with. The only thing that we cannot do is turn around and actually do the right thing. Sorry if I'm moving on to the philosophical here, but I think it's scientific and philosophical. And this is what Einstein meant when he made those comments, right?
Right. Christy, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, well, I love that you guys are talking about this because, you know, when you hear something like randomness as just a very lay person, not scientific at all, these kinds of concepts can be so misconstrued because, you know, just as an example, I do have an autoimmune illness. And so hearing that, you know, oh, there's just so much randomness and chance that are running out, that's running, you know, stuff, that's how it sounds to like a layperson. But when you hear all the scientific theories and stuff like that, you can just tell it's a different language. It's not talking about personally what's happening to me. You know, that's not what that's about. So I love that. And I wrote a whole bunch of, literally, I'm just like writing on my hand as you guys are saying things because there's so much to talk about. So I will also be reading Copenhagen. And also C.S. Lewis, it's time to name drop some of those popular authors. C.S. Lewis talks a lot about science and faith. And he does talk about how a lot of times if you can do what Tom is doing with his book and you just put these concepts into layman terms, a lot of times, you know, it's understandable, but it has to be explained in a certain way because language to a scientist often means something different than it does to the layperson who doesn't understand all the implications and like the context of terminology like randomness or the uncertainty principle. It's
like that one term means a whole construct, like a whole thing.
Exactly.
And
it's not the same thing.
Together, and are talking about these huge ideas and things.
Yeah.
But I think that is one of these things that has happened, is that the science, even like quantum mechanics, and also spirituality to some extent, different spiritual modalities have been totally embraced by lay people that don't know what it is that they are necessarily talking about or embracing as part of their worldview, and it is insufficient for their life, for being. And then they're in a place where, well, I believe this, I believe that, I've planted my flag here and there, and then a crisis happens in your life and you are thrown into chaos within your mind state and within your heart. And that kind of stuff is just, that's where I see spirituality is weak in somebody that might do something like that. But also maybe their materialism and their that side is weak as well. You know what I mean? Because you have to, you don't just say, yeah, well, I mean, I believe fill in the blank, I believe this, and then be done with it. You have to know what all that is for it to really make sense and be give you peace in your being.
Yeah.
To be able to stand up against life, because life is going to throw stuff at you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dario.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you mentioning materialism and spirituality, and Tom was talking about how the science all of a sudden appeared, and during Renaissance and going forward, actually kind of pushed out pushed out the faith, and kind of replaced to a certain extent. That's how I understood it. And I think you could also say, yeah, we've been much more spiritual before, but now it's materialistic and so on. But the question is, whether our spirituality historically didn't also come from the materialism, and the facts of the or conditions of living, and the desire to understand why the material state is what it is. Because imagine struggles, high child mortality, poverty, tyranny from the authorities, and people are searching for explanations for why things are hitting them like they do, and then if you cannot explain it, then you are starting to look for there is always kind of divine intervention in everything you see around you, and then all of a sudden a tool appears, and then that with that tool you start to understand some of the things, natural phenomena and so on and so forth. It doesn't solve the fundamental issue. It doesn't fill the hole in your soul, but it does make your life easier. And then what is happening now, I think, is that we are discovering slowly that okay, all the nuisances are gone. We are having a quite easy life, at least we in the West, but still the hole in the soul is still there. And I think that despite the advances of science and so on and so forth, it is not replacing the need actually to try to answer some fundamental questions that are in there, and I think as a result of that we will be returning to spirituality more and more. And the fact that we are sitting here talking about it in our warm, cozy homes. It could be one data point.
Be great, thankful for it. Go ahead, Tom.
It's so well said. So well said. That's the way we live is a big part of why the society as a whole is thinking in a certain way. We have a lot of when I for example have chats with my friends, he's atheist. And it always goes back to this point of like Christy mentioned, the words, the meaning of the words. When he uses the words true, he means, and I asked him, he means anything that can be proven. Okay, that's not what I mean by truth.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I don't know what you can find on the dictionary under the voice truth, but there are probably different nuances word. And what I mean from truth is not something that you can prove, demonstrate empirically, experiment, etc. Truth, correct,
Right.
is something deeper and broader at the same time. And so I hope that's clear, because I think that's one of the fields where a lot of this debate is playing out, and where a lot of the disagreements are playing out as well.
Right. Go ahead, Chris.
I agree. Yeah. I think, yeah, pretty much you just pretty much added to what I said, and I agree.
Well, what Dario? I mean, Dario's on the level there, right? So what Dario keeps, kind of inching toward, and even talking about without saying explicitly, is where this dialogue really needs to sit, is in it, and it is in the area of philosophical inquiry, right? Because I mean, what we are looking for is truth. We're looking for some kind of truth of being, some truth of the reality, and nothing is off the table as far as what can be brought to bear on that. The questioning comes from within the individual, and is informed by all the experience and everything we see and anything we can test, observe, all that as well. And that's where the dialogue really sets. And to your point that you just said, Tom, that it is the individual, what they think and where they're at has to be given value in it. And if somebody, some people are ready for this kind of conversation, some people are not. Some people are yearning for it. Some people can't even wrap their head around it. And to some people, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and some people don't care, or at least they
Some
think.
people don't care. Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
This notion that the science would be able actually to answer these fundamental questions regarding the our existence, the reason for our existence, for instance, and the human life in a context of a larger scheme, and so on. To me, it is. I went through a personal journey in trying to get there, but I didn't really succeed. And you Christy, you asked when we were chatting before the show, that personal journey is quite interesting to talk about as well, because that is actually what is shaped how we think about things now. And just for me, when I grew up, I grew up in a communist country, so basically the organized religion and so on, it wasn't in Yugoslavia, it wasn't forbidden, but it wasn't encouraged neither. And if you are openly religious, you could not hold a public office, you could not be a member of Communist Party, and then basically so you keep that low. So and the younger generation of my parents, they didn't really care. It was rock and roll, but the generation of my grandparents, some of them, they still kept their faith. And my grandparents, maternal grandparents, they were very religious. I grew up with them, and in the presence of the religious rituals and so on and so forth. But there was always this longing to understand, to get kind of a peace with myself, knowing that it's not ending here. This is not it. This is not like, okay, just a brief moment in eternity where I'm here and then I never been here, never will be again. Doesn't really matter. It is really that kind of thought. You don't get any solace for the longing you feel for not only understanding but getting calm down, so to say. And then when I started with the scientific work, it was a kind of a in the beginning, it was a kind of all of a sudden, aha, here is a tool. Now I'm gonna dig deeper into, to understand things better and so on. And then when I was in grad school, we went into philosophy of science, because you need to learn how to do scientific research. So you go quite deep into that. And the more I read about that, the less I felt that I'm going anywhere with the science as a tool to fill this hole, right? And now I'm still there, I don't know. Like and this is, to me, this is proof, really. I really tried through scientific inquiry to kind of get at peace with myself with regards to the issue of being, but no, it's not there. And there is in the book, in Tom's book here, here on the page, where are the pages? Do you have pages, man?
No, I don't think that.
No, you don't have pages. It is on some page here in this book. there is a quote saying that faith has to do with things that are not seen. It is the substance of hope.
That is from Hebrews.
Yeah. And this is, at the end of the day, that's what it comes to, and I think, we should give up, knowing, trying to find the truth, to find the proof. Hope in itself is enough. I don't think that we will ever be able to come further than that.
That's excellent. I'm glad you quote that, because if you think seriously about science, you go back to your own personal experience, like you said, Dario, because what happens is, let's go back to that moment, maybe as a kid, as a child, or a little bit later, when you, for the last time before today, you ask yourself the question with any potential answer. Be open to any potential. You hadn't figured out anything in your head, so you were completely open. Okay, and in that moment, a lot of what is in your head has been put by your family and the culture where you grew up. So it makes sense that in that moment you were Muslim, you were Christian, Hinduist, etc. But then we are individuals who grew up. My personal path, I left, even physically and geographically, my family, I left my country and ended up in London, which is, love London with all my heart, but I think it's one of the most godless places I've ever been in my entire life. And it kind of wrapped up on me a little bit, and I realized, I didn't realize anything. I just stopped caring about my spiritual side for a few years, to the point that you could have almost defined me as atheist for some years. The reconversion or conversion, or whatever we're going to call it later on, back to Christianity and back to my spiritual roots, happened not as a way of thinking or as a result of I'm sitting down and I'm doing 1 + 1 and equals 2 and I have an enlightenment. But conversion happened as a movement of my heart. And many times you read books about conversions in any type of tradition, any type of religion, etc. They tend to describe it in terms, movements of your heart, a movement of, deep, not something that you can get to simply with your. I mean, sorry if I go back to Dante, but in the Divine Comedy, at a certain point, Virgil needs to go, and and you need to progress toward paradise, paradiso, without Virgil. He's purely reason. He's purely our rationality, and we need something beyond rationality to get to the most highest potential of the human being.
Heart intelligence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Science, scientific inquiry, it is a method for investigations of material world.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
Let's not make it bigger than it is. And and then
Right. I saw a sign earlier today, like on my way to work. It said, I believe, it said science is truth right there. And that's the kind of just the kind of language that we have to be careful about, because that is a complete wrong way of putting it, so that people, that's why I say, well, when the science or spirituality or something that just falls down to some very low level and people are grabbing it, well, it's just misconceptions all over the place and that kind of thing. I love how you brought up Virgil, Tom, because I was, of course, talking about these kind of very lauded, people that are fundamental to science. There are many who were very spiritual in nature, and not just that, were completely practitioners of maybe traditions sometime, or just a very personal spiritual path work that would be completely shunned and not accepted by your modern lay scientific materialist, and one thing you said as well, Dario, about the getting into science, and you working through that in your personal path, it brought me to think of first Newton. That Newton is this giant who stood on the shoulders of giants, but he's this giant of science and gave us a lot of theories that are predictable and, for lack of a better word, true in our experience of the world, right? A theory of gravity, a theory of thermodynamics, and these kind of things. And Newton was an alchemist. Newton was a very mystic type of person that has a lot of writings that are not talked about and not going to be put out there by anybody of the scientific community. But this is the kind of person that he was. He's not somebody who was alienated from things about you that are not observable, measurable, but they
Right.
are essential. They're essential.
Right.
And also what you had said, Dario, made me think of that Max Planck. He came up with the Planck length, which is the smallest amount of anything, the quanta that we can see or measure or anything. That's where the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is applied, is to this area that can't even be really observed, but mathematically we can kind of touch it or something like that. But he said that your first draft of science will make you an atheist, but God is waiting for you at the bottom of that glass. And this is a father of quantum mechanics, and same thing with Heisenberg. And if you're not familiar, Niels Bohr is an amazing scientist to get into for this kind of discussion and topic, because he was also of a mystical quality, and mystical in this sense meaning internal, that they gain, and their drives and what they wanted to know come from questions from within, and they weren't afraid to look within. Same thing with Tesla. big time with Tesla. This is an inventor, somebody who worked with their hands, and science was just an accepted, had to be an engineer. You know what I mean? And Tesla would go into a dark room and meditate to get his ideas, these kind of things. So there is a lot of precedent for these kind of things to not be at odds.
Yeah.
Historically, and just in humanity. But so I hope that we've done a good job to kind of begin to unmuddy the waters for a discussion like this. Thank you so much, Dario and Tom, for both sharing your personal some personal experience with it, because that's what we're ultimately going to get to, where we are talking about the internal, like, and how these kind of ideas, scientific or physics or spirituality, anything that you come in contact with, how it's filtered and how it's processed by the individual consciousness.
Yeah. What about you, Christy?
Please.
Oh, well, yeah, I think that is kind of an essential realization, I think, to have if you want faith and science to like work in your head together somehow. I had that kind of like fairy tale childhood that isn't very common anymore, I don't think, where there is no such thing as cognitive dissonance and you think everything makes sense. And then I hit public high school was my first entrance into cognitive dissonance. And so ever since then, I've been kind of seeking out kind of those areas that mostly that conflict with faith or seem to, or people say that they do. And science isn't one of those things for me at all. I spent a good amount of time looking into science, reading perspectives on apologetics, common, big kind of apologetics thinkers and stuff like that. And I've just, there's enough subtlety out there that I'm not a scientific person, but I was convinced, and knowing people like you guys, I've met people who the two can coexist in their head, and it's not like they are anti-science or anti-faith. It doesn't really affect their faith in the same way that, C.S. Lewis says it's mostly like journalists and popular novelists who say that those two things conflict, and it's not even like a lot of times scientists a lot of times don't even say that those two conflict, because like Dario was saying, they're different worlds, So that's just what I had to discover, and it took me a few years, and now everything's fine.
Good.
And reading science fiction too helped, because like Madeleine L'Engle was a childhood favorite of mine, and she believed, like, her Christianity coexists very comfortably with faith, and it was very different from what I grew up with, entirely different. And so that really made me start asking questions, because she's a real Christian, and she believes in evolution, and she made it sound, a lot of things about science that just made it sound, like it could coexist with faith. So it just gave me comfort that even though I'm not a scientist and I can't really understand or examine these theories, and they're changing all the time, and it's so complex that anything that actually trickles down to my level of understanding has already been changed. It's like there's no way I can keep up with that, but it doesn't have to like ruin my faith. So that's kind of how I came to believe that cool. It's okay.
Absolutely.
It is, when you mention Christianity, Christy, I was thinking about what I was talking about previously about research programs and how people get stuck into certain research program, even in academia, for instance, even within the same discipline. You would have different research programs with the different theories, different body of theories that are promoted by different professors. You would have these clans of doctoral students who are hanging with this professor, and they think one thing and they refer to each other in their papers and they hate the other guys. It's really It's very, very, I can do a whole show about academia. It's crazy place. It reminds me a bit about the religions. You can say like this in a science, in a study of the material world, there are these different research programs that are which have this both positive negative heuristic. In the same way, when it comes to trying to get into kind of spiritual understanding, you have religions as a research programs with positive and negative heuristics. It's similar, right? So you have a Christianity, you have Islam, you have Judaism, you have all of that, where they are basically all these rules and tissling and tussling and hating the other guys, and we are right, they are wrong, and all that. So I think it is why I think why also many people get very uncomfortable when talking about faith.
Right.
People, especially that are inclined towards being very scientifically oriented, is because they think when you start talking about faith that you're immediately talking about one of these programs. Right. That you will put in their hands. Now you're gonna. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I'm this. I'm that. We are not talking about that.
Right then, right off the bat, have an emotional response in which it goes to argumentative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
exactly
because your belief system, whichever that is, tends to. I'm gonna speak something that sounds like scientific, but it's not, because obviously I'm not a scientist, but it kind of wraps around your ego, and it becomes so, it's almost as if it took roots into your ego. And therefore, as soon as you hear somebody criticizing your belief system, then it feels like they're criticizing you. They're criticizing ego.
Yes.
There's a lot of that in circles that I live in regularly, and I love everybody, but that's how they feel about it.
It's into Noah's expression, it's almost an amygdala response that we get. Our part of the brain that reacts to fear reacts as soon as they criticize my belief system. Oh my God, something.
Or not even criticizing, but just talking about something that you don't identify with, that you see as odds with something that you do identify with.
It is the same. It's the same in the scientific community. I remember myself, if somebody would come that is belonging to the other gang, and then said something that would kind of be not fully in line with what we were doing, my immediate reaction would be, oh, so you say I'm not intelligent, so you say I'm not, so you say I'm stupid, and this is we talked about this in grad school several times. Why it is, we acknowledge this. Why are we reacting like this? It is like a sect. You become like a sectarian even in the scientific community, and it also basically shows how dangerous systems are created where you are not allowed to actually to question. Right. And it is and we are back to where we started, to these funnels, where everybody is in their own funnel, and then there are walls between, and so we really need to find a way to cross-pollinate the discussion, because my personal belief, pretty obvious, science works. Definitely science works. Science works. We are talking about it through these phones. We are getting COVID vaccines. We are reading books. Science works, but it doesn't answer all questions that a human being might have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what the dialogue can do, really.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of effort, because everybody will feel that second of unpleasant feeling whenever somebody is criticizing your belief system. But do that kind of extra effort. Breathe for a second. Be patient for a second, and try to have the dialogue, right?
Having that kind of what you're talking about there, that's a big part, and is in a lot of what would be termed spiritual practices is having that space within yourself, having where you're not reactive, and you're not even responding from a place that is anything other than from the other person. You know what I mean? I want to say one thing, just to point to clarify a little bit, because ego is one of these words that has no real substance as far as like a scientific dialogue. There's psychological systems, multiple, that might use the term and define it within their own framework and things like that. But broadly speaking, what the ego is self-identifying thoughts that you use, that you identify with, that you use to it's so subtle within you. A lot of it is that you just identify that this is the way that I am, this is the way the world is in reference to me. And it happens at, when you're a baby, even it starts happening. You know what I mean? This thing is very subtle and very far reaching as far as the personality is concerned. The ego is, but the ego itself isn't a thing. It doesn't have any substance. What it is thoughts that might have been going on for years, that have been repeated, but it's thoughts that you identify with, that kind of thing. And having that on the table to talk about, it's different for every person what their ego is, because it's what they personally have come in contact with, experienced, and what they identify with. So just want to kind of clarify that, because it is part of the conversation. Because when we talk about ego, we can talk about people's egos in a general way and have fruitful discussion on that, always allowing that it might not be right for one or more, or even a group within the conversation. And also, when we do that, we can talk about the ego in reference to how people are, generally speaking, like this, and it will be a way to talk about something without anybody feeling attacked personally. So it's good to have that on the table, but it's hard to navigate that, because it's easy for somebody to just say, oh, it's not like this, it's not like that, and blow holes in it. And so just for dialogue going forward, I don't know how much we're going to use that kind of thing. It's more of a philosophical conversation, with the other side of that philosophical coin being mysticism, an internal within, instead of a going without and looking at the world and reality and making sense, trying to make sense in that way, but more of an internal going in. So we'll see, but this has been a great discussion. We're after an hour. If y'all are cool, if y'all want to throw in any more, let me know.
Good. It was the right type of introduction for these topics, no?
I think so too. For sure. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much for the adaptation, for turning us all on, and for being here for discussion. Dario, you stayed up late to be with us, brother. It is very much appreciated. Love to hear your thoughts.
My pleasure.
And Christy, I could talk about this kind of stuff with you forever. Hopefully we have a lot more ahead.
Yeah, thanks guys. This was awesome. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you much, everybody. And BookTube too. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.